Hey guys, TCG Collector, back again with another video. Today we have the banned and restricted announcement for September 23rd, 2024, this one pertaining to Commander. We have 4 cards to go over. Those are going to be Dockside Extortionist, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and Nadu Winged Wisdom. I will be going in descending order, starting with Dockside, going down until we finish up with Nadu. Starting off, we have Dockside Extortionist. This card originally came out in a Commander deck, was about 70 to 80 bucks. As you can see here, the listed median was 80 to 13. It is now down to about $25, give or take. We're still sitting around that $30 range. This card was banned. According to the article, Dockside Extortionist enabled highly explosive plays as early as turn 3 or 4, depending on your deck's consistency, as it made treasure tokens for each artifact or enchantment your opponents controlled. Remember, it didn't count yours, and you could have artificially boosted your treasure gain ability with something like Mycosynth Lattice, which is banned in Modern as well, as it would turn all of your opponent's permanents into artifacts in addition to other types. I stand behind this one. As someone who only owns one Dockside, it hurts a bit, but at the same time, I got mine from the pre-con, so I'm not complaining all that much. This instance, the banning is justified. It goes infinite way too easy. It gives way too much advantage. I support this one. Now, if you could tell from my tone, there's going to be one coming up that I do not support and one that I support even less. I'll let you guys figure those out, but we're going to move on to the next one. That next one's going to be Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus is one of the ones I do not support the banning of. It's a card only playable in Commander to begin with. It was also the premier card from the Commander Masters set. This is the chase card that everybody wanted. It's a 0-drop that produces 3 mana of any one color, and it's only able to be spent to cast your commander. So why they're banning this is beyond me. Like, let's say you have a 4-drop commander, right? You drop 1 land, you play this, you can get your 4-drop out, assuming it's 1 color or 2 colors if your land was a different color. You can get your commander out on turn 1. But that's also assuming out of your whole 99 that you get Jeweled Lotus in your opening hand, which it's not going to happen as frequently as most people say. Out of all of the games I played with my one deck that I had this in that we no longer have because I got rid of it, if I were to have played 10 games with it in a weekend, I might have gotten Jeweled Lotus once. Tops once. You never open this when you actually want to early on. And if you open with it consistently, there's something going on there to where you're stacking or something. Jeweled Lotus can't be played anywhere else. It's only applicable to Commander. It can't be played in Modern, Legacy, or Vintage because you don't have commanders there. So this one is an artificial hit. I don't agree with it. Sure, it's a cool card. It does neat things. But at the end of the day, it provides you only 1 color, so if you're outside of 1 color, it doesn't pay for as much as you think it does. Yeah, it might cover your blue pip and some commander tags, and the rest of it's done by your lands. Even if you go infinite with this, your commander has to be 2 mana or 3 mana for it to even start to cover. And that's before you take in commander tax into consideration. But I digress. Jeweled Lotus, I'm against only because it only had 1 place. And it devalues most of Commander Masters now. Not all of it, but a lot of it. This was the big card. After that, we have Mana Crypt up next. As we all know, Mana Crypt prior to this banning was about a $130 to $200 card. Your base list copy has dropped down to 80. Your double masters down to about 80. Your prices are plummeting with the exception of your premium arts up here. Now this card was banned for coming down for no mana on turn 1. It's quite possible to have an explosive start of Mana Crypt, Signet into Talisman, land, and another Signet. I like how they left out Soul Ring, because I've opened up with that, where I had land, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring. I don't run Talismans though, but I did open up with a Mind Stone. Same thing. I get where they're going with this. You could potentially have 5 or more mana on turn 2, leaving you with an egregious head start on your mana, which is cool, and I get what they're saying here, but let's count it out, right? We're talking about Mana Crypt into a Signet, so that's 2 cards, into a Talisman, 3, land, 4, into another Signet, 5. So yeah, while you might have 5 mana untapped on turn 2, you also have, what, 3 cards left in hand? Plus your commander. For that much mana investment on turn 1, you better have bombs in hand, you better have more card draw abilities in hand. So while I get what they're saying here, having 5 mana on turn 2, really strong. At the same time though, you leave yourself with nothing on the back end, or we presume we have nothing on the back end. Obviously, right here, they're in Magical Christmas Land, and we can't confirm or deny what they would have had left in their hand. This is all hypothetical. I disagree with this, mainly because I own a Mana Crypt, right? But also, if we're gonna start hitting cards that produce more mana than their mana cost, then why aren't we talking about other cards that do the same? If our whole issue is just the artifacts, well then, I mean, why don't we just hit Sol Ring? I mean, Sol Ring costs 1, produces 2, it puts you positive 1. Ban it, right? They do cover that here as well. I'll highlight it. And then you can read that on your own time. But they call it the iconic card of the format, and that's why it's not banned. Commander has its identity tied to Sol Ring, according to them. But you know, okay, so we're not going to ban Sol Ring. Fine. Fine, I get it. What about Mana Vault? Are we going to talk about Mana Vault? Comes down for 1, produces 3. Yeah, it doesn't untap during your untap step. Yeah, you gotta pay 4 to untap it, or it deals you 1 damage during your draw step if it's not untapped. But I mean, we have stuff like Unwinding Clock, which, you know, also, you could technically have Unwinding Clock down on turn 2. You play land, open Sol Ring, tap Sol Ring, drop your Mana Vault, tap that with the 1 floating, Unwinding Clock, boom. Now you have 5 mana untapping on turn 2, and you've technically used less resources than what they've commented on. It's possible, it happens, right? It's Commander, it's a wild format where anything could happen. I mean, if that's not enough, why don't we go a little deeper with Grim Monolith? 2 mana instead of the 1, produces 3 mana, same as the other one, costs 4 to untap, same as the other one, doesn't untap during your untap phase, but it doesn't deal you any damage. So you go back to the Unwinding Clock. You know, this will untap on everyone's untap step. Yeah, you can't play it on turn 2 without a little extra shenanigans, but still, if we're talking about things that produce more mana than they cost. And like most of these other cards on here, I mean, these prices are crazy because this is a reserve list card. So just for damage or heavy play, you're looking at $200. So if it's not about it produces more than it costs, then it has to be financial cost, right? That has to be part of their reasoning. You know, you just banned 2 cards over $100, 1 pushing $100, and 1 that was at most, if you had the premium version, maybe $10. So it has to come down to people are going to tournaments and proxying these and then getting disqualified. That has to be it. At least in my mind, they're doing it for financial reasons. The only other thing is they're actually looking out for the health of the format, but I don't see it, right? 2 out of your 4 cards I can see it for. The other 2 I don't. And I mean, again, we're talking about Grim Monolith because it's an artifact. We talked about Sol Ring, we talked about Mana Vault. Well, why don't we talk about some lands now? I mean, let's talk about Ancient Tomb at that point. Ancient Tomb, it's a land, comes down, produces 2, and deals you 2 damage. Almost exactly the same thing as Mana Crypt, right? The difference is Mana Crypt, you have to flip a coin, roll a die, rock, paper, scissors, whatever, to determine if you take the 2 damage. The difference here is when you tap it, you take the 2 immediately. But they've deemed the 2 damage negligible at best, so why is an Ancient Tomb banned? Again, it's 1 land that produces 2 mana, so it's a free drop and it produces 2. And then you gotta go at it again, right? It's $92, give or take. You can get a light copy for 70, 92 seems to be the high end. So why isn't this hit? It produces more than it comes down for. It's an expensive card. I know it sees proxies because I see them everywhere. Okay, well, maybe it doesn't produce enough, right? Maybe the 2 damage is a downside enough for it to be passed on the ban. Well then, what about Gaia's Cradle? Granted, if you play it on turn 1 with no creatures on board, it does nothing. But if you have 10 creatures, if you put it in a squirrel deck and you have 50 creatures, it then produces 10 to 50 mana. Granted, it's all green, right? But if you're in a 1 to 2 color deck, that doesn't really matter. In addition, it's on the reserve list, so it can never be printed again. And a median cost of $600 for damaged copies, right? So it's a big ticket card. If you have one and it gets hit, it's gonna be a feel bad moment. But we're talking about things that produce more mana than what they cost. Gaia's Cradle is definitely one of them. And it doesn't stop at Gaia's Cradle either. Then we have Sarah's Sanctum. Sarah's Sanctum is the same thing as Gaia's Cradle with the exception of it produces white and it's only for enchantments. So yeah, dropping it on turn 1 or 2 might not give you the biggest boost. But turn 3 or 4, where you might have a few, because now we have enchant creatures, we have a brand new enchantment land from Duskmourn, so this would count as well. Then you have commanders like Sithis, Harvest Hand, who their whole gameplay strategy is enchantments. Granted, enchantments are more of a niche thing, but we have enchant creatures, we have enchantments, we have enchantment artifacts, we have a whole lot of different enchantment varieties where this could pop off. And I know because I run one in my Oloro enchantment build, right? And I'm currently building Sithis. And this is all pre-banned, by the way, so this is stuff that was already in my head. Again, we're talking about things that produce more mana than they cost. And again, another reserve list card, not nearly as egregious as your Gaia's Cradle, but I digress. And since we're already living in magical Christmas land, what about the Tron lands? So you have Urza's Mine, Power Plant, and Tower. In a magical world where you have your perfect hand, you have all 3 Tron lands. You have 7 mana on turn 3. For some of these, I see where they're going. For the others, I don't. But we're gonna move on from Mana Crypt. We're gonna go on to the last card, which is Nadu Winged Wisdom. Nadu Winged Wisdom, a card that was already banned in Modern, rightfully so. A card that 100% I support being banned. This card had no business being printed in this variation. If you don't know, when they were making Nadu, it originally was a whole different card. If I can find that iteration, I'll put an image of it up right now. But effectively, the effects were completely different. It was specifically made for Modern. When some smooth brain extra chromosome having person spoke up in the boardroom and said, hey, I don't think this is gonna work for Commander, and nobody threw him out of a 15-story window for daring to speak of Commander in a Modern Masters set, where Commander should have no bearing on your set creation. I get why they do it. It's to move overall more product, but Commander does not need to be in every set that is made. If you want to throw some Commander cards into Standard, by all means, 1 or 2. If you want to throw them in your Commander Master set, Commander's in the name, you might as well go all out, unless you're making Jeweled Lotus, in which case we saw what happened to that already. A Modern set should have no cards that are specifically made for Commander. They should be made for Modern, and if they happen to fit into Commander, that's just a nice bonus. This card, I'm so happy it's banned. I can take all of my Nadu hate pieces out now. However, they didn't ban the card that I wanted them to ban. That would be Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle leaves you little to no room for interaction. You have to counter it on the stack and then hope that they don't have follow-up plays, such as any kind of recursion, any kind of counter magic of their own. Yeah, it's, if you're banning not fun play patterns, then why didn't you ban Thassa's Oracle? Why didn't you ban a whole bunch of other 2-card combos? It doesn't make sense to me. But I digress. That's the ban and restricted announcement. If you guys have made it this far, please consider leaving me a like and a sub, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on the ban and restricted announcement. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.